Hello, Adrian. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. It's great to have you here to talk about South American RPGs, South American fantasy and culture. And I'm excited to have you here. How are you? Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and today's guest is the great Adrian Mejia. He's a game designer, author of Koboa, a South American fantasy setting for
Brazil,
D&D, which is
and I'm
about to
always
come out.
excited
He's been
to
working
know
it for a
explore
while. To a
South American
crowdfunded
culture.
He's
and
from
get to know
Ecuador,
people
he lived in
that
Brazil
work
for a
with
while,
this
and now
and
lives in the United
researching and
States.
creating
So he has
things like
this
this. We-
unique view
We
of
started a few
almost
years ago,
everything here in
the
America,
RPG
like,
and
and
this
kind of
Spanish
movement on Twitter to draw more
Spanish-speaking
countries,
eyes
Brazil,
into the
USA.
stuff that
But before we
people
get
from
into
here,
that,
people
I'd like
who
to remind
descend
you
from
that
people from here
please,
are
if
creating.
you like the
And
show,
I
you're
saw,
listening to the show,
Koboa,
subscribe
the South
to it
American
wherever you listen to your
fantasy
podcast.
setting
Give us a
you're
review.
making
Tell
for,
people what you think about the show, what's
D&D,
good, what's
Pathfinder,
bad.
and all kinds of
Support
fantasy
us
gaming. And I was
wherever
like,
you can.
wow,
Share
this-
it for friends.
this looks
If you have
amazing.
any coins
I
left from your
want to know more
last
about
adventure,
it. And
check out the
Twitter,
show
we
notes,
kind of
how you can
connected
pay us
with-
a
we
coffee
haven't
or buy
talked
one of my
very
games.
much, but
And
I'm
getting back to
this is like an
talking about
opportunity for
Adrian
me. I take
Mejia,
this-
we talk
this
about how
podcast as
weird
an
is
excuse
kind of an
to
act of
get to know
resistance,
other
and
creators,
how
get to know
Koboa
other
was
creations
born
too.
as
So
almost
I
like
wanted
a
to invite you
rebellion
here and-
against the
and
colonization of
get to know a little
fantasy,
bit
like
better and
European
get to know
fantasy that kind
Koboa
of
a little bit
took
better.
over
So,
our fantasy, our
Adrian, can you-
imagination.
for the
and
wonderful
we're
weirdos
in
there
South
out
America
there,
trying to
listen to this and maybe
seek
not
our
know who you
roots
are,
and
and
seek
I
our
also
own kind
love
of
to
fantasy,
hear from
which is
people who
kind of
come
what
here
Koboa tried to do,
in their own
which
ways.
is kind of a war
Who is
against
Adrian
colonization. We
Mejia?
talk about its setting,
what is
its
that you
people,
do,
its
and if
place,
you can you share
its
just a
themes, the
small
favorite
weird
things
detail
about the
about
setting for
yourself,
him. We
maybe
talk
the
about
way you do coffee or
RPG
the
in
hats you
Latin
buy or the
America. We
clothes
talked
you wear,
about
anything
culture
like
in Latin
this?
America. We talked about Covenant
Yeah,
Hoops.
so
We
I
talk about
am.
anime forms.
I'm
We talk
Adrian.
about Severance,
I
which
was
is
born and raised
fantastic
in Ecuador. My dad's Ecuadorian. My mom is
sitcom, like
Brazilian.
a series, a
Um,
horror
so-
and comedy, and
yeah,
how to
so I'm
turn
a
that
bit
into
like a little
RPG.
videoka.
He also talked about comedy shows. We talked about
I
The Good
yeah,
Place,
we used to visit
which is a
Brazil. Well, we still
fantastic,
visit Brazil.
a
My
funny and
parents are living there
philosophical
right
and
now.
very intelligent show that I
But
recommend
then I
everyone
went
to
to
watch.
a U.S.
It was an
American
amazing
school
chat.
in
I
Ecuador,
hope you
so
like
my
it
teachers,
as
half
much
my
as we did.
classmates were U.S.
So
Americans.
let's
I
get
feel
weird
like I've
with
had like three
Adrian
different
Mejia.
cultures just squeezed together into my
Yeah.
life in my early years. Um, I then went to college in the United States, and I've been kind of going back and forth between Ecuador, Brazil, and the United States ever since then. I'm a software engineer. I love making games. I love wearing sweatpants. My wife hates it when I go to like doctor meetings and stuff wearing sweatpants. My little Star Trek
Yeah.
sweatpants are great. It's, one of the weird things
Yeah.
about me, I guess.
That's great. And
Um,
do you like go to parties in sweatpants and stuff like this and drives your wife crazy or well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's so
That's great.
comfortable. I mean, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My problem is with no cargo shorts. Everybody hates cargo shorts, but they have pockets, and we carry cell phones and keys and wallets and a Kindle, and I always want to carry something to make some notes. So pockets
Oh
are
yeah,
great.
yeah.
So
You can stick your Kindle in your pocket. That's just the dream right there.
yeah, well, a cargo pants to have those big pockets, it's perfect for a Kindle. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And-
actually when I was younger, I was really excited to have I wanted to like upgrade my wardrobe. So I went to a tailor to have like some fancy jackets for going out, like custom made to my size. And I
Wow.
was like, "Well,
Yeah.
you're the tailor, like can you just do random things?" They're like, "Yeah, like what do you want?" And I was like, "Can you put like a little pocket on the inside that fits my Kindle?" So I showed him my Kindle, he measured it and he made a pocket in which my
Awesome.
Kindle perfectly fit, and like it was just so comfortable and you couldn't even tell I had it like when I was walking around. So it was just like that was like the height of my fashion, I would say.
That's great. That's they should sell Kindle compatible jackets around there so people can or not necessarily Kindle, but books. I don't know. I'm always carrying a book with me because I don't know if I'm gonna be stuck somewhere. So we gotta have
course.
something to read, of course. You mentioned
They're just a little
your-
harder.
your father being from Ecuador and your mother being Brazilian. Do you speak English, Portuguese, and Spanish?
Oh yeah, I found yeah, I consider myself fluent, if not natural, in all three of those languages.
Nice.
My writing in Portuguese I don't consider like perfect, so I avoid
Yeah, I
writing in
mean-
Portuguese as much as I can.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I feel like I speak all three perfectly.
That's great. That's great. And that's a great advantage, for making the stuff that you're making, right? So you can basically you have all the language, the main language we like the countries speak here, so you can research, you can look into all the folklore and all that stuff. And Adrian, the podcast is called Weird Games and Weirder People. You talked about maybe a weird thing you did, and for a lot of people, South American fantasy can be pretty weird, right? If they are, used to European centric and now this Jerry fantasy that's mainly American, like this orcs, kobolds, and very colorful kind of D&D, World of Warcraft, and not necessarily South American fantasy is like that. So, what do you think? In this show, the weird has this very positive vibe, and I'd like to ask you, what is weird for you, and how does that maybe relate to the South American fantasy you're working on and researching?
So I feel like weird to a large extent is us just breaking away from the, what's considered normal. I mean, this is dictionary definition, I guess. But I think it is an act of resistance, especially in a world that's been super colonized. For us to say, like they want me to be this way, but I don't. That's not who I am. I want to be different, and I will be different, even if people think I'm weird in the bad way, or if people don't want to relate to me. I think that doing what we want to do, even if the culture that's been created around us is pushing us away from it, is an act of personality. It's an act of resistance. It's an act of I don't know what the
Yeah,
word is here, but yeah.
a rebellion. It's an actual rebellion. I was talking, I think,
Yeah.
the last episode with Onslaught. No, yeah, what went on air last? I think Jordan Duby from Goosebump Games, and I'm sitting down to play a tabletop role-playing game in this highly digital and isolated world is an act of rebellion, right? No, like we're not
Mm.
gonna be isolated and not gonna be on our devices, staring at screen and worrying about making money or being productive. We're gonna sit down in front of each other, sharing maybe drinks or a meal. We're gonna roll dice. You're gonna pretend. You're gonna be silly. You know,
Mhm.
it is amazing, and doing that with the themes too is great. So, do you think is that what you set out to do with Koboa?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started playing role-playing games and when I got really obsessed with fantasy, it was very much the European style, Eurocentric fantasy, knights, white people, European culture. And I didn't even realize like that it didn't have to be that way for a very long time. And then when I was like, oh my God, like, my character doesn't have to be speaking like fantasy English. They can be called Carlos or they can be called whatever non-English name I want them to. They don't have to be like knights. And like I started realizing too as I got older, there's just so much culture in our countries and our continent that just nobody knows about and that it has been forgotten or mostly destroyed by the colonizers.
Yeah,
That is so unique and so different, and so beautiful. And I wanted to integrate that into like my role playing games. And as I did, I thought like this is something really special. This is something really cool. Like maybe we can get more people involved in this and make something that's just really amazing and really shows South American talent and South American culture.
yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that you didn't realize that fantasy, your games could be more than genre fantasy and European centric fantasy. How did you get into that, conclusion? When did you saw that you it could be so much more than that?
It's kind of embarrassing and funny. There's this show called Freaks and Geeks. And
Oh
it
yeah, Carlos the
yeah, yeah,
Dwarf. Yes,
exactly.
I
Carlos the
love the
Dwarf.
show. Yeah,
Yeah,
Freaks and
so when
Geeks. It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
yeah, it's such
Yeah.
a good show. I really love it. But yeah, when he says his character's called Carlos the Dwarf and somebody kind of laughs at him, he's like, "You got a problem with that?" And they're like, "Oh, I guess not." I was like, "Oh wow, like
Yeah.
you don't have to have a
Wow.
problem with that."
Yeah, amazing. And the characters were not necessarily, associated with South American culture, but just the name made it click for you, and that's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
And how was that transition in the beginning? Like how did you start inserting that in your games? Did your players find it weird in the beginning? Uh, were inserting this in a campaign, or just started creating Koboa, or started making a new game completely, or you just inserting it slowly in your games? How
I
was
mean, at
that?
first I was inserting it slowly into my games, but I got so excited about it that I was like, no, I have to just throw this world away and make a whole new world. So I started a bunch of campaigns. And it was interesting because for my campaigns with people who are mostly not from South America, not connected to that culture, they were like, "Oh, this is interesting. This is cool." Whereas for the people who were from South America, they're like, "This is amazing," and they were kind of like having the same like brain exploding moment that I had with the Carlos the dwarf. They were like, "Oh man, what if I make a character that's like this and has these personality traits that I've never even thought about integrating into my characters before?" And like my players like started making subclasses, making up like magic items. They were just so excited that it was just like this like explosion of creativity.
Creativity, right? Inspiration, and because you feel represented, you feel part of that, and you feel you can create in that, right? Because it's a reflection of us in a way. That's amazing.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
can you tell us a little bit about Koboa? What is the setting like? What is the main inspirations like? You have a great adventures of being like in the middle of it all kind of a way, right? I know. I mean, speaking Spanish and Portuguese and English and being able to read into all those cultures. Do you? I want to ask about is like, where were your main sources of inspiration for the setting, like culturally, maybe in legends, maybe countries? Do you have this kind of? How is it in your settings? Is very mixed?
Yeah.
Do you have like separation, like nations, like we have in South America? How is Koboa? I know it's a lot. It's a campaign setting. It's a big book, and talking here is like very reductionist. Is very, but I mean, I wanna learn a little bit more, and I hope I'm sure the wonderful weirdos that listen to this want to know more about this too.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah. So Koboa is very closely coded to the history of our world. It's a post-colonial setting, which means that you had people living in this land, and then people from somewhere else came and tried to colonize it. And they colonized it for a while. There was a big war. They were defeated, and after that, Koboa has been split into five major territories, which are each have like their own themes and their own inspirations. So one of the territories is called Novpo, and it's inspired heavily by Andean indigenous cultures. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different. It also takes a lot of inspiration from the Inca because the Inca Empire was all over the Andes, as well
Mm-hmm.
as the Quechua, the Quichua, Aymara, cultures like that. There is Majgot, which is another nation, and it's more coded in indigenous Amazonian cultures.
Mm.
Guarani, Tupi, Shukuru, all of those cultures. It's a lot of what you see in like a lot of well, we try to stay away from like tropes and stuff, but like rainforest is such a popular thing in RPG, so you see a little more of the things that you're used to, but you also see like blowguns that are actually used by indigenous cultures instead of the tiny little ones that they use in like most fantasy settings and stuff.
And how
Um,
are the communities of people from Madagascar? Because it's one of the themes I'm very into, because it's Amazonian, it's very Brazilian, and it's something I'm exploring on Primal Quest 2. And I know they're
mm,
fighting a lot of new stuff that we didn't know about, 10 years ago. And I'm curious, how are the people from the Amazonian cultures? Like their
mm.
communities, do they have cities, villages? How are they?
So So we have like two major styles of living in Majgod. We've got people who were more colonized and got more used to like building a settlement, and after
Mm-hmm.
they got rid of the colonizers still had their settlements, and they're kind of in the edges of the rainforest, and they trade with people from other territories and from other nations.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the people further in who live cyclically, they live seasonally. They'll be in one place for a while, then they'll go somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else, and they'll kind of like go between different spots. Getting resources from them and never like fully exploiting or like exhausting the resources of one place. You might call it nomads. We try not to use that word because
Mm-hmm.
our since it's our indigenous
So
consultant
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
said
yeah,
like
yeah.
try to avoid that word. But yeah, so there's those major styles of living. They are split into hundreds of different nations. That's why we say territories and not nations, because like within a
Yes, yes,
territory
yes,
there are
yes,
hundreds
yes.
of sovereign
Yeah, yeah.
independent nations that each have their own leadership, their own different styles of living. Yeah. Does that
Cool.
answer your question or?
Yeah, yeah. It's just curious, yeah, because as I've been reading, some books recently, and we have this very idea that before the invaders and colonizers, the Amazonian cultures were like this very seasonal and changing a lot, and they didn't have settlements. But recent scans and findings have found very old settlements
Oh,
and
like this is
roads
like
and
super recent. This was like from a couple of months ago, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
very people are finding very, you know, cool things. Like we always thought that, like the Amazonian cultures were very maybe not as advanced or sophisticated, and maybe as Incas, and they built cities, but they had roads, they had communities, and they had some places with thousands of people living in almost very close villages that seemed like a small city and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was almost disappeared under the forest, right? Because we can see we don't have you know this because research it, like there's a lot of resources to research natives and original people from Europe, from Africa, and from the United States, but like for South Africa because it was the beginning of everything, right? So people are like researching there. Europe because it's where the money was in the United States. That's thing, but like South America, there's a lot we don't know. A lot of was destroyed and lost, and I think there's a lot of it we can discover about it, and I'm excited to see what we can learn, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. If
and
you want me to keep
yeah,
going through the five
go ahead. Yeah.
territories,
Yes.
yeah. So then we have Atzatray, which is more based on Afro-Latine culture. So the
Nice.
Atzatrites, it's this big giant city that's split into different districts that are all over Koboa that are all connected with portals. So like even though they're far away geographically, they're all basically next to each other because you just walk from a core portal and you go from the beach section to like the volcano section or whatever. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, so we had a lot of inspirations there from Afro-Latina cultures, and then we have Gran Mercelia, which is kind of like where all the cultures mix together, and it's more based on like urban mestizo sort of cultures in Brazil and in the rest of South America. This is where
Yeah, yeah.
people who are like descendant from the colonizers live, but like there's a lot of like different cultures mixed together. And then we have
Mm-hmm.
Nueva Vardia, which is more based on the colonizer culture, more based on like the colonial times. These are the survivors of like the remainder of the colonizers on the continent who like kind of like clustered together and defended themselves and are still there and are trying to learn to live with in a continent that they're no longer like the masters of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of trying there to deal with like the whole like aspect of South American identity, where like like some South Americans are we're still part of the global South, but we're still like less marginalized than like Afro like especially white South Americans. Are less marginalized like Afro Latina or indigenous South Americans. So we
Yeah,
also
yeah.
want to deal with that, like that idea of like
Mm-hmm.
still having like marginalizing while being marginalized.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Yeah, like for example, in my country, I am white, but if I go United States or Europe, I am not white. So there is this strange thing.
yeah.
That's awesome. And what would be like the typical adventure in like Koboa? Do you play? What is that characters do in Koboa? They seek to treasures. What would they seek to unite these nations? They seek to what is like the main themes in Koboa to explore?
Yeah, so we try to put like all sorts of plot hooks everywhere. We say like, people from Novpo are trying to like rediscover their roots, or they're trying to like clear out monsters that have arisen in their underground cities, or people in
Mm-hmm.
Majgod are trying to like restore the forest that was like destroyed by the colonizers who like were trying to get its resources. So they're trying to like bring
Mm-hmm.
it back to balance. But our main society that we created to like as a plot hook are the Stone Seekers, which is this group that is trying to find old relics and old places that the colonizers destroyed or lost or displaced or
Oh
stole,
yeah.
and figure out who they belong to and give them back to their rightful owners. So one of the major plot hooks that we have is you can just join the society and they'll send you to places and be like, look, we've heard of this relic over here, get it, and
Like a
let's figure out who it belongs
restoration,
to.
to restore what
Exactly.
is lost. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's amazing. It's a great main theme and focus for the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
does
Restoration.
yeah, and what does it do you have anything like the setting changes as you restore those places? Do you think what is kind of what happens when the players start restoring these cultures? Did they learn about their past, about the things that maybe were lost? Do you thought about it maybe
Yeah,
exploring a little bit or yeah.
we're trying to leave it up to like the individual playgroups to decide how what they're gonna do with that. Like if they're gonna like go
Yeah.
super deep into the history and make these histories up and stuff. We're trying to give them the tools to do that, like with magical spells that you can use to communicate with your
Yeah.
ancestors and stuff.
And are
But
these things answered in the book? Like these things about the past that were lost, do they have this information in the book, or is this something for the players and the GMs to create uh, in their own
yeah,
campaigns?
so a little bit is in the book. Like a little bit, we have like some tools. Like I said, we have like here's a magic spell to like talk to your ancestor, or if characters decide to give a relic back instead of keeping it, or looting it, then you can reward them this way to help them make their own magical item instead of taking something that belongs to somebody else. But mostly we
Mm,
do hoping that like individual play groups will be able to like come up with these things themselves using the tools that we're giving them.
nice, nice. And these tools you mentioned are what are they exactly? Are they like they are like tables or like guidance, history or like the spells and the magic books? Did you point
Yeah.
them anywhere to the research, like maybe history and things like this in the book for the
Not within the
inspirations?
book, but
Okay,
we do have like an appendix where we talk about every inspiration that we took. Like we go through every single item, every single
nice, nice.
subclass, every single culture, and we say that, this is inspired by this other thing, so you can like go research it
Mm-hmm.
more if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you could say uh, one thing or two things, maybe, which would be your favorite, weird things in Koboa? Weird in a good way, like weird is the new wonderful. It's kind of one of your catchphrase of
Mm,
Koboa. What would you choose as your favorite weird thing, and why would you choose that?
mm. Well, one of my favorite things is we talk about also in the book about alternate forms of like writing things down or remembering stuff. Because like reading and writing books, text is something that came from like the Europeans. Indigenous cultures in South America that had other things. We had we don't like there's dispute like the Inca had these things called quipus, which are like ropes with like or threads with like knots on them. And there's dispute whether they were just used to like store numbers or whether they were maybe used as a form of communication or like writing. But in Koboa, it's
Mm-hmm.
used for writing. Like we say, like instead of a spell book, you could have like a bunch of quipu knots like knotted together. We have illustrations for that and stuff. We also talk about oral history systems and how people think that an oral history system is just like, oh, we just remember a story and then over time the story changes or whatever. But actually, these oral systems had all these safeguards to prevent corruption of the data that they store.
Wow,
Like you have to have it in a certain rhythm or it has to rhyme or stuff in ways that like if a word gets changed, you can tell that the word isn't supposed to be there because it no longer fits within the rules that the system has. Um,
nice.
so yeah, we talk a little bit about using that instead of a spell book, for example. So I always think that's like a really cool different thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really well researched and makes a lot of sense and makes you feel the setting is real and authentic, and you can explore it. That's amazing.
Mm, yeah.
Uh, Adrian, one thing that I always ask here is, your sources of inspiration. I mean, as obvious as game designers and artists, we always drawing from all over the place or experiences, things we read now, but also, at least for myself, I can identify very easily a period in my life I draw a lot from because it was like the stuff I consumed in that time was kind of refuge to me. So like comics, literature, movies, etc. From especially from my childhood are really inspiration to the stuff that I make. Do you have any kind of thing like this for you, like a area of your life that you're always constantly drawing from, be it a period or uh, an aspect of your life that you always seek inspiration from?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I have always been like a very heavy reader, and I've always tried to read from all sorts of things. So I did have a life where I was just reading nonstop. So I still remember a lot of the books I read, and I kind of like catalog them and go. Same with TV shows and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like I have like big long lists of like TV shows I've seen, and kind of like can like find old things to rewatch to like get more inspiration. Um, yeah, I think that's the main answer I can
Yeah.
give you.
Would you say, do you have any main source that maybe inspired Koboa, or maybe which inspired something you're working on right now,
Mm.
or
I
Kopo? I don't
mean,
know.
so yeah, so Koboa wise, like a lot of I was lucky to grow up like in Ecuador and like for school, like they took us to look at like sites where there had been like constructions by like indigenous cultures and stuff. So that was like super inspiring to me, and I got to do a trip to Machu Picchu a few years ago. That was
Nice.
like
Yeah.
likewise a very big source of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And another thing that always inspires us and help us learn our craft, usually other artists, other creators, maybe other writers, game designers, I don't know, that either taught us, not necessarily, being a teacher, maybe you studied their work or you inspired by the way they talk about their craft. I myself, I draw not only for game designer, but also comedians and writers. Do you have maybe any
Mm.
any artist or creator that serves as a role model or as inspiration to you, that you either learn it from them or try to emulate the way they approach their craft?
I always really liked Bill Watterson, the author of Calvin and Hobbes. He had I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with the comic strip, but he had such a singular vision
Yeah,
for
I
his
love it.
comic, and
Yeah.
he would not let it be corrupted by like, merchandising or the demands of like the
Yes.
newspapers that he was publishing for. He said, "No, I want it to be my own way. I'm not gonna fit like they told him like it has to be like the squares have to be laid out this way." And he's like, "I'm not doing that. If you don't want to publish my
Yeah.
comic, then don't publish my comic, but it's not gonna be that way." And I feel like he just advanced the genre so much and like did so much experimentation and so much improvements. It's just amazing to read like his
Awesome.
story
Yeah.
and what he did with it.
Yeah. I agree completely. I love Bill Watterson. I love that series of when Calvin goes back in time to make his past self do the homework, but they kind of align to make his future self do the home. It's a whole mess, and it's amazing. And
If you don't want to
yeah, I
do your
love that.
homework now, why would you think your past
Yeah,
self would want to do it?
and I love that same thing you said. Like he didn't want to, sell toys and a bunch of things and turn his art into just another pop culture product, which I don't hate because I love Star Wars. Star Wars is very pop culture. But yeah, do you have any moments in your creative life or your work that you felt inspired by the water, say, no, I'm not gonna do this. It's I'm gonna make it pure and authentic, and avoid some other path. Do you remember any time you correct your course, remembering about Bill Watterson?
Yeah, I think it's more just about like making our own paths, for example. For Koboa, we wanted to like if I can use that as an example, since that's the one thing we've made so far. It's instead of races, we didn't want to like do races or whatever, so we started experimenting with a bunch of other alternatives. And people like it's very much like a mainstay of the genre to have races and stuff. Instead, what we have is
Mm-hmm.
like this idea of forms, which are there's these magical items that can change how your body is. And there are like archetypes that you can follow, which are there instead of like your race. But you can switch one, like in a character's life, they can switch from one form to another if they like it better, or if it has significance to them personally, or they can mix them together and stuff. So it's kind of like a bit of a weird change to the genre, that we were a little like hesitant about. But like, Bill Watterson experimented a lot. He tried a lot of weird things out, and we thought like, well, let's try some weird things out, and
Yeah,
we've been getting like a lot of good responses with it. So
absolutely. And if it doesn't work, the next time you would do different, right? I mean, like
yeah,
that's one of the great things about creating art and creating games is it's trying new things. Like it doesn't have to be the last thing we created. If it doesn't work, we can always make a new one, right? You mentioned
exactly.
Koboa was the thing you working on now. Are you working on anything new? Are you working on more things for Koboa? What have you? Are you working on anything at the moment?
Yeah, I've got a couple of other personal projects that have been advancing pretty nicely, and I'm trying to play test now. I got an Animorphs powered by the Apocalypse. Well, a game, a PBTA game based on Animorphs. That I've been playtesting. I don't know if you ever read that book
Mm,
series, but it was just a lot of fun. And I feel
I
like it
heard
works really
about it.
well in
Yeah.
PBTA. Yeah, but I'm more excited about a cyberpunk project I'm doing called Neo Quito. Which is what I've been making my own system,
South
my own.
American Cyberpunk. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. South American cyberpunk
Yeah.
with a custom system that I've been making that I'm really excited about. I feel like it leads to really exciting moments. And kind
Very
of just trying
cool.
to figure out how cyberpunk looks in a place where the dystopian future is basically our day-to-day life.
Yeah. I have a friend here in Brazil, which he has a setting. He even invited me to like work on an RPG for it, but I was super busy at the time. We did, talk about working on it later. I don't know how it is, but it's called Gambiarra. The word is like
Yeah, it's
this
like a kind
jury
of like
rigging kind of stuff. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
Carioca cyberpunk. So it's very, corrupt and, organized crime and everything is, our daily lives in cyberpunk. So it's kind of really cool. Like you have like train surfers, which like the people on top of the trains, and like the classes are kind of very archetypical of our reality. And yeah, I'm curious to see what you think about Neo Quito and how it reflects. And yeah, I'm excited for this project. Amazing.
Thank you for pointing out Gambia. I'm gonna check this out like right now because
Oh
I've
yeah,
been
he
trying to
has
find like
he
as much
has
South
comics.
American.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna
awesome.
put on the show notes here. Like there's comics, there are like short movies, fiction. He has a really well thought of multimedia kind of setting and project. He wanted to
Hmm,
tackle like everything. Like we studied together in like a comics course when we were kids, and we kept contact until today. He's an amazing creator too. He doesn't work on games, but he is very into stories and words and world building. Very creative. So if you wanna
amazing.
check it out, it's a good source of inspiration, for sure.
I absolutely will. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Adrian, what do you think is kind of your advantage or maybe your talents that you bring it to your work uh, that you're kind of proud of? Maybe, yeah, something like this. Do you have something like this? Something that's you and unique to you that you're proud and you bring to your work?
Yeah, I feel like this has been a challenge for Koboa because I feel like my main voice in creating is indignation. I am most creative and I feel like I create the best things when I am indignant at some injustice or angry about something. Which is why cyberpunk is like so much easier for me to write
Yeah,
for. But then when I'm trying to make something that celebrates rather than critique or than criticizes or like yells at something like a boa, it's like a little more challenging. But yeah, I feel like I bring a lot in when with creating metaphors or creating things that reflect the real world. I feel like is a big strength of mine when I'm writing. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It's yeah. It's a escape valve. Like it's something a creative valve for us to express ourselves and maybe our insatisfaction with our reality in a way. I'm working
Hmm.
I'm working on a bunch of stuff, but I'm started working on one of my games called Petty Gods and Playthings, which is about small gods with greater ambitions than the mortals entangled in their machinations. So inspired by Discworld, Lankmar, Adult Swim, New Game, and so it's mixed some of my favorite things, which is atheism, comedy, role-playing games, urban folklore, and sword and sorcery. So I'm writing and make jokes and making critiques about religion and the way we things are authorities. So it's like I'm loving it because it's mixing everything that I love, but it's very angry and critique and making fun of religion, making fun of authority, making fun of rules, and also making a game. It's really fun to make. So yeah, I totally
That sounds really
understand,
awesome.
being motivated by anger in a way. And I remember
Yeah.
this book called Still Like an Artist by Alcin Kleon, and then it talks about how he sometimes get in the morning he opens Twitter and Facebook and reads all these awful things that are happening, builds with rage, but instead of just replying, he gets up and go do the work with the rage. Do you have anything like this? By the way, do you have a creative ritual or maybe something weird that you do to help you get into the mood and start working on your art and your crafts? Maybe to build up that anger and do something with it?
So I mean, I've had ADHD all my life, but it only got diagnosed like 2 years ago. So a lot of my work style is still just being all over the place and not being able to like really make a lot of rituals. One thing I have
Mm-hmm.
done, one thing I used to do, I don't think I've done it any time in the last like 5 or 6 or 10 years, but I read about an artist. I'm trying to remember who it was. It might have been surrealist. What's his name? Well, anyway, he believed that the best place of creativity was the space between being awake and being asleep.
Yeah.
So what he would do is he would get himself in a comfy chair and hold a coin in his hand, and then put a plate underneath his hand. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment he fell asleep, he would let go of the
Yeah.
coin, and it would make a loud noise when it hit the plate, which would wake him up.
Did you do that?
So he was, yeah, I used to try to do that every once in a while,
Yeah.
and I feel like it like
It,
put me in an interesting headspace.
That's awesome. It's not exactly the same story, but I heard, Salvador Dali would sleep.
That's him.
The
Yeah,
same
that's
thing,
him.
would go
Okay.
to a couch and put like a spoon on his mouth, would sleep with a spoon on his
Mm.
mouth, and would fall asleep, the spoon would fall off, he would wake up, and then he would paint. I've I always heard the story, but I never met someone that would had tried that. And in your head, and how is it? What do you feel? What did you tell us a little bit? I'm very curious about how was the experience for you.
I mean, honestly, it's just I felt very sleepy. Um,
Yeah,
like you're
I
falling
bet.
asleep over here. But I do feel like it like when I was doing it, it helped me remember like the dreams that I was starting to have. Like I would almost be like still dreaming when
Mm.
I was awake. So it was kind of like sort of like a weird lucid
Oh,
dreaming state sometimes. Other times it just felt like I had just fallen asleep and woken up and I didn't really feel much different.
yeah, but it helped
So I feel like
one time or another. It did help.
yeah, I would say so for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit how you feel. Like I'm all over the place too. Like I don't have like a time to write or anything. I just wake up, do my day job, take care of the kids, take the kids to whatever, do stuff at the house, and I sit down to write in like the nooks and crannies between the stuff I have to do at home. But I found that when I do that, I try to something like to make it a routine or consistent, which is like maybe a kind of music or maybe I don't know, try to do something to keep me at it. Otherwise, I'll
Mm,
forget and do something else. Uh, do you
I'm
work
with
on
you.
your art every day, or do you? How is it? Like, do you are you always work on creative things, or just sometimes and when you get the chance or you get inspired?
So I mean, a lot of it is inspiration. I try to do something like every day, except when like life gets too busy, of course. But
Yeah.
I do consider, like reading and research part of creating art. So I do
Oh
do that
yeah.
every day. Like I always have like a book by my book stand, or I have like the new TV show that I'm watching to like get myself into the genre. So like lately, for
Yeah.
example, like every night I've been like putting something cyberpunk related on, like while I'm going to sleep, and it's like just like a
Have
form of research to like.
Have you ever watched Severance on Apple TV?
Oh, Severance is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm a
want to
huge
make a
fan. Can't wait
game
for the next.
about this so much. Like you have a character inside
Yeah.
the job and one a character outside the job, and maybe it's
Oh
like the same
yeah.
person. Maybe two players play those characters. You play the one inside, and the guy plays you outside, and you play him outside, and he plays him inside, or something like
Oh,
this.
that would
I'm
be so
very
interesting.
yeah. I mean, because it is this, right? It is something like this.
Yeah.
That TV show is so cyberpunk without really looking cyberpunk, right?
Yeah, it's like its own aesthetic, and I love the fact that the aesthetic like creates a mythicizes, I guess, a common thing in our culture right now, which is, the business
Work.
environment, the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you have like these mazes of the cubicles, which is exactly how it feels when you're going into the office and walking among the
Yeah.
cubicles.
Yeah.
You
I
have like
felt that
these
a lot. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought that
And
was
it's
so
kind of
interesting.
fun. It's so weird. It's like it's very it's kind of sci-fi. It's funny. It's dark. It's brooding. It's emotional. It's mystery. I know. I love the Office, but it kind of feels like the dark Office in a way, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
directed by Ben
absolutely.
Stiller, so it has comedy, but it's so tense. It's
Oh
a great
yeah.
show. I don't know.
I love it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
super recommend it. Now
Yeah.
you've got me
I
thinking
mean,
about how like I would make a TTRPG about that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I love doing this show too, and just talking to people, and then we have ideas for games in the middle of the show, and I'm like, I have to not to write this down, otherwise I will forget, you know. But yeah,
I feel like you'd have to
it's
do it like in
something
a
I've been
magical
thinking
realism type
about.
of way. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Something we're doing in Neo. Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, something we're doing in Neokito because we wanted to have like some like magical realist sorts of elements is that
Mm-hmm.
you actually play in two different time periods. You play as like these cyberpunk revolutionaries in the city of Neokito, and you play as the community 100 years later after they've won the revolution, and you play through the
Oh,
community as it's
nice.
dealing with like some new crisis. I feel like something like that might
Oh,
work for like a game based in Severance because you kind of want to have like the two people playing the same character. Like, how do you manage them playing like the same character in two different sorts of times? How do they like interact with each other? There's a little bit of like
yeah,
non-linear
yeah.
storytelling
There's
there that I
similarities.
feel,
Yeah, yes, yeah.
yeah.
Very interesting to research too. And there's like this other game. I think it's Dave, or my name is Dave, or my name is John. It's like everybody plays the same person with different
Oh,
like a personality disorder or something. It's
everybody is
something
John, I
to
think is what it's called. Yeah, that
yeah.
was a fun
Everybody's
game.
John. Yeah. Uh, I mean, take a note this. Everybody is John. So yeah, something
One
like
of the
this.
first games I played actually besides
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah. You mentioned, reading and researching and counting that as parts of, your creative process and, creative work. And and I'm always trying to convince myself of this. I'm and have a hard time, but I have this complete conscious of this. And I always like pushing myself, no, you have to write more. Sit down and write. You're not doing it. But yeah. Do you know do you have a day job besides working on your art, or do you have other hobbies? You mentioned life is busy. Like, who is Adrian Mejia outside of role playing games?
All right, yeah. Well, I am a software engineer as my day job. So that does keep me
Ah,
pretty busy a lot of the time. I have two kids, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we love them very much and
yeah,
try to
and
give
that
them the
takes a
best
lot
lives
of
we
time.
can.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. For trying to just help them develop, encouraging like
yeah.
good
They
habits with
are the
them.
real work we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love, like I said before, I love reading.
What
I
you're
feel like I
reading
don't have.
recently? Something
I've,
good you can
yeah, I've been
recommend, or?
reading Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina, the Open Veins of South
Oh
America or
yeah.
Latin America. Yeah, that's been a good source of outrage and indignation for sure.
Yes. Yeah, a
Um,
classic book about this. Yeah,
I've been
I
getting
have
a
to
lot
read it
into
too.
oh yeah, I've been getting a lot into magical realism too. I just finished 100 Years of Solitude last month, and I'm rereading
Mm-hmm.
La Casa de los Espíritus, the House of Spirits now. I should probably read The Alchemist now that I think about it. Reread that one. But
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of good
that's been
stuff.
like
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Uh, Also, Adrian, what you talked about the good stuff, like the talents that you bring to the table, but I also love asking, creators here to maybe share something they struggle with when they're like creating and how they deal with that to maybe inspire wonderful weirdos out there that working on their own projects and having their own difficulties and seeing that there are ways around it. So do you have anything that you find you particularly struggle with? And if you do, how do you do with that in your work?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Koboa is literally the first project I've ever come this close to completing. Um, and I fully believe that the reason for that is because early on in the project I got diagnosed with ADHD and started taking ADHD medication. So I think mental health is a very huge thing that has helped me create.
Oh yeah,
Just to try to figure out like how does my mind work. I also realized I'm autistic, and I've been figuring out what that means for me and what that means for my creative process or even just my day-to-day life.
yeah. I found out
Realizing,
I am
that like
too. Uh, like 2 years ago. Yeah, no, last
yeah.
year. Yeah, that's my kid 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, actually, like we were like, oh, I think our kids are autistic, and then we started researching it, getting them diagnosed, and then we were like, wait, I think we're autistic. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, then realizing like, oh, that's why I get so stressed out at the grocery stores because like there's all this stimulation, there's all these people around me, and realizing that helped me realize like,
yeah.
wow, I'm so much less productive when I get home from the grocery store because I'm still like in that
Mm-hmm.
like heightened state of like alertness. So just being aware of those things, taking medication if there's any that'll help you that like you're using responsibly, have all been helpful things.
Yeah,
Um, imposter syndrome has also been something that I've had to deal with a lot. Just feeling like, am I really like a good creator? Is this really like good? And like what I like to say in response to that, I don't know like how appropriate it is or whatever, but I like to say like pretend you are a global north cis white male because a lot of the times they don't care. They'll like they think everything they do is like the height of perfection. Like all those CEOs out there, Elon Musk over there, just thinking that everything he does is just pure gold. Is like, approach everything with that
yeah.
level of confidence. Just think that like nothing you do can go wrong.
That's yeah. Think of yourself as a the white male American from I don't know,
Yeah, ask
Silicon
yourself like,
Valley, and you
yeah,
have a
ask yourself
startup or
what would
something.
someone with no self awareness and a giant ego would do, and just say like, you'll probably do it better than them, so you're good.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, imposter syndrome is hard. As we're saying, writing this game about petty gods and humor, and one of the type of worshippers you can get is artists, which is like I joke that they are worst of the worst. They think they are gods and doing their creations, and we had to put a stop on them. That's why we created imposter syndrome. Something like this.
I love
And
that. That's great.
so it's great, and mental health is so important. And I have anxiety disorder, and I'm autistic too. And I remember during the early years of the pandemic, I think 2020, I was super anxious, and I was kind of productive because I was all that was focused on to ignore all the mess that's going outside was like writing and doing stuff. So I wrote like 5 games. But then I neglected,
Oh,
family, friends, my kid, etc. And 2021 came, was like a huge crisis, and made me stop and reflect and take care of myself, health, mental health, and this kind of stuff, and help me bring balance to it and enjoy my work more. Like I'm not producing as much as being obsessed in spending hours and ignoring everything. Of course, I'm not. But I'm thinking I'm doing it better. I'm doing it happier. I'm not like super worried, and I'm happier in my personal life, in
mm,
my professional life, and it's great. Like it's really really important, and self awareness, like knowing ourselves. You said like doing the diagnosis and stuff. I have a lot of friends that are like, I don't know. I think I have. I don't know if I'll do the diagnosis or not. What good it will have? I don't know. It makes a lot of good for like self acceptance, and understanding that these difficulties are not something it is something in your mind, man. Like it's not something you can control, right? You maybe forgive yourself. Did you find yourself changing your behavior a little bit? Like before I knew I was autistic, I would endure some certain situations because I didn't have like an excuse to get out, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
no, this is really bothers me, so I don't have to endure this. So I would just get out. And did that change to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to one extent, like it took a lot of shame away, like
Yeah.
sometimes like I would like, if I went to sleep and there was a bright light outside, I would like be like, I should get up and close the curtain, but I might think like, no, like I can sleep through this. I don't have to worry about that. But now it's like, I can just create a space for myself that is comfortable to me. And if people think I'm being overly sensitive, like who the fuck cares? Like I just
Yeah.
need to take care of myself. I need to make a space that's good for me. And now that I understand, that I have different my different sensory perceptions or different ways that I think about the world, it's
Mm-hmm.
helping me like adapt things to be more ways that are comfortable for me. And that takes a lot of
Yeah.
shame away from being like, oh man, I'm not like that good at
Mm-hmm.
like tolerating certain things, or I'm not that good at like sitting still or whatever. It's like, well, that's just because my body works differently. And I don't
Yeah.
have to feel bad if I like, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
walk outside instead of waiting inside, What was that?
Yeah. Did your when this changes came, did people close to you, maybe your family, your parents and one, notice this change, and how did they react to it? You know, for my parents,
Mm.
my mother especially, it's still having a hard time adapting to stuff. It's learning, but how was these people around you reacted to the way you changed it because your self awareness, you're taking care about yourself more.
It's interesting. And like in some ways, like when I started taking ADHD medication, they're like, "Wow, you're paying so much more attention at like conversations, and you're on your phone less." I'm like, well, it's literally just like I wish you weren't offended when I was
Yeah.
on my phone before, because it wasn't like I was distracted. It's like I was make using strategies to like keep paying attention, and sometimes like having something to fiddle with helps a lot.
Oh yeah.
I've had family who are like, "Oh, like you're not autistic, you're just exaggerating or whatever." So that's always like a little challenging. But then like
Mm-hmm.
my sister, for example, I was like, like I think I'm autistic because X, Y, and Z. And she's like, oh yeah, that's kind of true.
That
And
makes
and it's
sense.
been
Yeah.
kind of nice. Yeah. She's like, oh man, that explains so many things about like the way that like we've interacted before and stuff. And I feel like that's like made things easier, like interacting moving forward too. Like I used to feel
Yeah.
really bad, because sometimes I just wouldn't know what like the polite thing to do was. Like I would,
Mm-hmm.
I would forget to say like thank you, or if somebody did something nice for me, I like,
Mm-hmm.
and in South America you're
Oh
supposed to give
yeah.
them a gift after so many days or whatever, and I would forget all
Oh
these things.
yeah. I'm terrible
And
with
my
that
sister,
until today.
yeah,
Yeah. But
exactly.
I'm like now I'm don't worry about it because like yeah. Well.
Well, like with
Yeah.
my sister and I, we just like made this agreement. Like she's like always reminding me, and I'm like, well, that helps a lot, and like this actually is very helpful. So she's kind of like, I'm not like depending on her or anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
when she can, she like helps me like navigate like some of these social
Oh yeah. Yeah.
interactions.
My wife does that a lot for me. I owe that a lot for this, but I mean, yeah, it's hard. I mean, like I traveled to Gary Cohn and Game on Expo, and I did bring some stuff for people, but I forgot a lot. Like I didn't bring anything for my parents and stuff like this. And it's how we discuss. I'm
Mm,
like, you have to travel, you have to bring stuff. And I remember at work, I would I would be working and I had a problem. I would have to talk to the boss. I would get up and go straight to the boss, talk to him, and come back. And people like, oh, Diogo is so, not
correct.
gross. It's like so rude. He comes here, he
Mm.
doesn't talk to anybody, he doesn't say hello and
Oh
stuff. Like,
yeah.
no, I was just worried. It was just trying to. So now I have to go. Hey, everybody, how are you? Is everybody? This kind of stuff. It was bad in a way, but I always because I didn't want to do right because I was worried about like I
Right.
have to do all this acting and masking, what we call nowadays, right?
Oh yeah.
But I got to know people that I didn't know before, and I made friends, and I don't know, it's good and bad in a way. I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think I think everything can be good or bad, but the more
Yeah.
information we have on it, the better. Like You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're masking and you don't realize you're masking, that could be painful. But once you know that you're
Mm-hmm.
masking and you can like limit how long you do that for,
Oh
give
yeah.
yourself breaks, that can like, that can be
Your
so helpful.
boundaries, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Adrian, talking a little bit more about games again, what would you say would be the weirdest game you ever played, or maybe a weird game you played recently that made an impact on you and made you think about games, made you think about art, and that can be on a role-playing game, a board game, a video game, or a sport, anything like this.
I mean, Disco Elysium comes to mind right away. I love that game. That's become like my favorite game ever. Um, Computer role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
With just so many different like perspectives and storytelling and just you know, I keep remembering that moment where your character like who like is an alcoholic walks by like some like alcohol on the counter and the options you're
Mm-hmm.
given are lick it, don't lick it, or lick it but just a little bit. It was just such a interesting
Yeah.
interaction
Well,
for a video game.
I haven't played it yet, but I heard good things about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
definitely recommend it.
uh, did you did it made you think about ways you could apply some of this weirdness in the work that you do, or made you think about stuff that you could explore, or maybe exploring Neo Quito something that you took from Elysium, or
Yeah, I mean more than anything, it's very inspiring because like you can see how the creators put themselves into the game and how they put their own perspectives and their own thoughts about the world into the game, and it's like it makes you want to do that yourself. It makes you want to like make a game that has like this like deep story and these deep ideas and how they come out in the game, how they come out in magical ways, how they come out in funny ways. You don't have to be super serious all the time to make a meaningful story. You can put in jokes, you can put in all these funny moments. And I think that's
nice?
super
Yeah,
important, especially for role-playing games where we're going to make it funny whether the game is supposed to be funny or not.
yeah. We especially players, or we can help players will take anything serious and turn into funny. And I think it's I also think even like really serious and dark games have to have at least one or two funny moments to balance things out, right? Because
Oh
if
yeah.
everything is tense all the time, it's the same note, so it's not really tense. It's not like the same thing. So you have to have mountains and valleys, like to have these feelings, right?
Yeah.
It's like I remember
Contrast.
I love it. For example, the Lord of the Rings movies, the trilogy. I love the books, of
Mm.
course, but the movies are kind of quite good. But on the other hand, the Hobbit trilogy, I didn't like it at all because it was, for me, it was very action movie all the time. So the rhythm is very action, 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 action. So there is no mountains and valleys for you to feel those emotions. It's very overwhelmingly, oh, action, orcs, combat, run, river, ambush. It's too much, so you don't feel
Yeah.
the emotions. So I
Yeah,
think
you
that's
want
that's
like
the
this you want this rising action, but it's relative, like if you want a scene that's more exciting than if you want the scene that's the most
uh,
exciting at the climax, you can either make it more exciting than every previous scene, or you can make the scenes before it be a lot more calm so that then when you get back to action, it's
yeah,
like a lot more exciting when you contrast it.
yeah. It's all about that. What you said, like it's about contrast. So you have to have the funny and the horrific and the exciting and the tranquility. Even the fantasy, right? For it to be fantastic, the mundane has to be there. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it's just a different kind of mundane. Uh, Adrian, we are about 1 hour in. We talk about games a lot, and now I would like to ask you a little bit more personal questions, maybe about weird things and weird experiences. And I always like to start asking about maybe possible weird experiences you might have had in your life with, you know, near death experiences or out of body experiences or very like trance like, or maybe you saw something weird. Have you ever had any of those really metaphysical and weird, almost supernatural experiences? Anything like this?
Honestly, I can't think of anything to be honest, unfortunately. Um
Do
I
you
mean I had
have
a
you ever
weird
had Any kind
I
of
was gonna.
do you meditate or anything? Do you have experience with meditation? Or start
Yeah.
small with
So
meditation, for example.
yeah. So I used like so I when I was small I like the school I went to was evangelical Christian school, so I used to like pray a lot back when I was super evangelical and believed all that stuff. So I used to pray a lot, and it felt a lot like meditating. Like the when I meditate now, like it feels a lot
It
like prayer.
is
Like they're
kinda.
very connected and have very similar techniques
Yeah.
involved. But yeah, it's especially lately it's been more just about clearing my mind than having any sort of
Mm.
transcendental experience in my
Yeah.
experience.
So you never had any of those moments you felt like maybe you're floating or maybe there's someone else or connecting to other people like in deep states of meditation?
Hmm. Not no, not really, not that I could say.
Yeah, it's okay. It's like start small. You
Yeah.
mentioned, evangelical Christian being raised religiously, and I always ask people here about this too, like about maybe if you have any sort of religion or spirituality, or even if you follow any kind of philosophy that helps you guide you in your life in tough decisions like this. So, do you have anything like this that helps you?
Yeah, so I have been what's called deconstructing lately from the upbringing that I had. I've been trying to like take the things that I still like agree with and believe in, especially about morality, and get rid of the ones that weren't so good, like the circles I was raised in had a lot of very very intense feelings about lots of non-majority people, like
Yeah, yeah,
the Christianity that was given came with a lot of white supremacy, for example. There was always this like under subtext of the US American way of doing things is better than the Ecuadorian way of doing things. Like not, that was never said directly, but that was always like subtext there. So I've
yeah,
been trying to like kind of like deconstruct and like take the good parts and get rid of the bad parts, which has led me a lot to like kind of like focusing more on like the material, what's here and now. Um, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about the good parts you're trying to keep and focus on? You mentioned, being here, being now, which has a lot of to do with meditation and mindfulness and things like this. So, do you have any? Is this what you're talking about, or then like other examples of the good stuff you're trying to keep?
Well, something that comes to mind too is that despite some like issues I have with like philosophies or viewpoints that I was given, one of the places I was in had a very strong mindset for social justice. There was a lot of taking care of the poor or like fighting for better situations for people who are not in the same economic place as us, which I mean is it's something that's very like in the front of your mind in a South American country because like you see poverty very very clearly
Yeah,
there, not the way that you see it in the global north. So it definitely gave me tools, training, and thoughts about how important it is to make sure that like to do whatever I can for people all in my immediate vicinity as well as in the rest of the world to like get their basic needs met, to fight for
mm-hmm.
justice for them to like have their dignity, to not have like their dignity taken away. Yeah, so that's been something that's like always been like at the forefront of my mind that I try to like keep doing, keep practicing, finding ways to be active in my community, ways to be active politically to try to get things changed so that we don't, mistreat the poor the way that capitalism makes us do so much as a
Yeah,
society.
yeah. And is your family still very religious, or they did they go to this deconstruction kind of phase too? Do you still go to church,
Um,
for example, or anything like this?
yeah, so my parents do. My wife and I stopped going to church, although we have been a little interested in like a local Unitarian church that we've been wanting to like check out. Um, but yeah, my parents still do. My mom keeps telling me like, you should go to church on Sundays, trying to like guide me in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. So, you So you do believe in God and kind of the supernatural, kind of the godly, the holy Trinity and stuff?
I don't think so anymore. I definitely did, but I think at this point in time, I'm more like kind of an atheist, more.
So the church would be something more social, more community driven that you're thinking about going?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes perfect sense. It's yeah, it is about community too, right? Going to church and stuff like this, and it's very useful.
Yeah.
It's something, yeah, that I
One thing
envy
I got from like
from
my
religions
my
and being out.
Christian days is just, sorry.
Yeah, it's something that I envy from religions people is that like being an atheist, and we don't have a church, to create
Mm.
community and stuff like this. We just argue with random people on the internet. It's our tradition. Uh, but
One of my
having
favorite artists in
yeah,
Ecuador called Guayasamín, he had the same issue as you did. So he actually created this place called the Temple of Man that was supposed to be like a church for the atheists, like a place for people to go to meditate and connect with each other. It's just a
yeah,
really cool place to visit if you're ever in Quito.
yeah. That's a great idea. I think I know. Like in the United States, they have the Satanic Church, which is basically an atheist church who
Hmm.
does charity stuff, and they gather and stuff. It would be a good way, like an atheist club would be maybe something like a reading club or maybe a gaming club, or I don't know, or
Mm.
just something to talk about philosophy. Maybe I don't know. I'm atheist, but I also, because of my anxiety and stuff, I read a lot about Stoicism, which kind of helps me with my anxiety and my issues and stuff. So would be a good place to discuss this. But yeah, I envy the community and being there and have these meetings and they have parties, right? And it's community is very important. So yeah.
Mm.
And
Definitely.
and Adrian, another things that I ask you maybe about dreams. Like, do you remember the dreams you have, or don't? How are you in relation to dreaming? Do you daydream or do you just dream at night?
I mostly just dream at night, and I do like I have periods of my life where I remember like every dream I have, and I lucid dream like all the time, and I have other periods of my life where I don't remember like anything at all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I was
Do
a
you see
kid, I had
any
like these.
relation to the things you're doing? There's the spirits. Are you stressed when you can remember the dreams, or do you see any relation, or just random?
I think a big part of it is just like sleeping. A lot of it goes back again to like my material condition. Like
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, I realized I have sleep apnea as well, so I like started using like a CPAP machine they're called, kind of like a mask that you
Mm-hmm.
wear at night that keeps like your airways open. And I
Yeah.
started sleeping so much better, and that definitely affected like suddenly I was sleeping like more deeply and like remembering more dreams. And of course, like when
Mm.
I'm stressed out, I have like dreams about that topic or whatever. I remember when I was a kid, I had like recurring nightmares. I had like some parts of my childhood were a little difficult, where like I was kind of the outcast in school, like didn't really have a lot of friends. Got made fun of a lot. And
Yeah,
I think that was
autistic
reflected a lot
kids.
in like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
us. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that was reflected in like having like recurring nightmares. I have this like one I remember very well where I was like at the top of a big skyscraper and Godzilla's like destroying the city. And then like this skyscraper had like the whole wall is a
Wow,
window and I can see him destroying the city and I'm just sitting there like, please don't notice the building I'm in. Please don't notice the building I'm in. And the dream always ends when he like turns around and like he's not looking at the building I am, he's looking directly into my eyes and like starts moving towards me and that's like the end of the nightmare. Um
wow. Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah. I
was an
mean,
interesting one.
you mentioned being outcast. I always felt isolated too, but it's also this nightmare. You said like you kind of you don't want to be noticed when it's all this wreckage going on. It's also like us like I felt this like sometimes there's so much things going on, like people fighting. I remember in my house my parents and fighting,
Mm.
and I have the same sensation, like I'm in this building and I just don't want to Godzilla to notice I'm here, so I'm just gonna be sit really still and what I did, be in my room and do my stuff. And I don't
Mm.
know, did you have these feelings when you were a kid too that reflected in your nightmare? Did you sometimes wanted to be invisible in a way?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like the even like not even just like violence or destruction around you, but even just chaos around you. You just want to like
Yeah, yeah,
find somewhere stable and just hope that it stays stable, you know?
yeah. My kids just went to like a bigger school last year, and he's autistic. And one of these difficulties during recess, all these kids, 8 years old, running around and screaming and all this chaos, and it's like he just wanna find a quiet room and play with his Legos and play with something very
Mm,
quietly. Yeah, so
yeah.
I understand that for sure. Uh, Also, Adrian, something I always ask people here, and I hope you're okay with the question. If you want to talk about, we can just skip about it. It's maybe if you had any experience with altered states of awareness, be it either to we already talked about this, like deeper meditation, or maybe with the use of psychedelic substance, and maybe you had an experience and saw something and changed the way you saw the world. Have you ever had any experience with this with altered states of awareness, psychedelics, anything
Oh
like
man.
this?
I w- I wish I had a more interesting answer for you, but no, not really. My wife tried weed once, but that's about as close as I can get.
You haven't tried
Um,
weed? Never?
no, no, we got so I'm actually kind of terrified of altered states of consciousness. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what it would do to me. I like to be in control of my body, you know? So like I'm like terrified of like
Oh yeah,
losing that control.
yeah. I kind of just I never tried anything like this like before. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I did try weeds, but I didn't know how to smoke, so I was like, this is nothing. And my friends were like, oh, hi. I was like, you motherfuckers are pretending, right? And and I got to experiment because of anxiety like a couple of years ago, and it really does help me. But in like psychedelics too, I started really small. And I don't know if you have heard about microdosing, that kind of helps
Mm-hmm.
you with mood and attention and focus. And there's a lot of documentaries about a lot of real thought out research by like big universities, big scientists that helps with many things. So if you wanna experiment with, you don't have to like to experiment to have like big trips and and see
Mm.
the truth about the universe. And like it's something that can help you calm you down and helps with mental health. And if you treat like a physician or maybe a psychologist or maybe that can work with this, uh, can be an effective tutor for a bunch of stuff. But yeah,
Mm.
once I did that and I felt more comfortable, I did experiments and did some trips, and yeah, it's something that you get to know you're comfortable with the lower things to try the higher. But I never lost control of my body. I mean, I sometimes had
Mm.
to stay still because the trip was something. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that
I
makes a lot
realized
of
a bunch of
sense.
stuff about my parents, about traumas,
Mm.
about I saw a lot of me, my kids, and I don't know. It helped me with some issues with my anxiety and invasive thoughts. So yeah.
Mm. That makes a lot of
Uh,
sense.
yeah. Talking about other supernatural stuff. Do you believe in any other supernatural things like maybe ghosts, aliens, cryptids, or maybe any of our South American folklore stuff, like maybe the chupacabra, or maybe here in Brazil we have all sorts of the saci, and some people swear
Mm-hmm.
by God that they saw it. Do you have anything like this? Do you believe in any of those supernatural things?
Yeah, I absolutely think that I absolutely think that there's all sorts of life on Earth that we haven't like documented yet. Probably like met it. I think that there's all sorts of aliens all over the universe. But I also like in the topic of aliens, I also think that like with our current understanding of physics, I believe that we're never going to meet aliens in our lifespan. Just the distances are so vast, like I'm 100% the aliens are out there, and I'm almost 100% certain that we'll never like as a species like meet them. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, this is maybe like a bit of a boring answer. Just they're out there, but they're gonna always be out there.
yeah. And what about ghosts? No ghosts? Ghosts or no ghosts?
Hmm. I think no ghosts mostly.
No
Yeah,
ghosts. Yeah.
it's too scary to think about. Like like I don't know. Like, is it scarier if there is something after death, or is it scarier if there's nothing after death? Like,
I don't
I don't know
know.
which one terrifies me
It's
more, but
very
they
it's
both are
very
both have.
individual, right?
Yeah.
I think it's scarier if there is something after death than there is nothing, because we don't
Hmm.
know what it is. It can be good, it can be bad. Is this thing coming back to screw with us? We can see it. I don't know. I would rather not have anything. Like, this is it. Enjoy what you have. I love this. One of the I talked about the artists that inspires me, and one of them is a comedian called Pete Holmes. And one of the things that
Hmm.
he says, like, this paradise already. You're already in it. So, be the best person you can be, and and live, right? Because sometimes we get too stuck
Hmm.
into doing what we have to do. We have to work. We have to get a house. We have to do this. We have to get money. We have to have this safety net. We have to have all these things that we have, and we forget to just live and then enjoy ourselves, enjoy each other. So, if we were certain there is nothing afterwards, I think would be easier for us to enjoy this, right? And
Hmm. Yeah, it
be
makes a lot of
awesome to
sense.
each other more, right? Because that's
Yeah.
all we have. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely something I've seen too. Like people sacrificing the here and now because of the beliefs they have for what'll happen like after in the afterlife.
Yeah. Or not necessarily afterlife, like in the future.
Hmm.
Oh, I won't do this now. I will only do this when I finish college, when I finish this, when I get this job. I will only, you know, have a postponing happiness until you think you've earned it, right?
Hmm.
We
Yeah,
do it to ourselves a lot too when we see people doing it. So we
so
have to
true.
have this conscience. Has a relationship with this, right? Everything. I love the one theory, like everything is like a miniature. It's a micro or a macro version of everything else, right?
Hmm.
Like the cells, and then the way atoms work and planets work. Like everything is a macro or micro version of everything else. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
uh, Andrew, one of the now we're like getting to the final part of the podcast, which are more like whimsical and funny questions, uh, stuff that you think about the imagination, creativity, and a little bit of personality. What I'd like to ask you is, like, if you could live in any fictional world or universe, be it from like movies, games, literature, TV shows, anything, where would you choose to live, and who would you be in that universe?
Oh man, I mean, I would just love to be myself in The Good Place from the show The Good Place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I don't
love
know if
this
you ever
show.
like,
I
yeah, talking
love the
about
show.
life after death. Yeah.
I am obsessed with The Office, so everything people from The Office do after The Office, I'm watching it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah, me too. Love Parks and Rec. I love The Good Place.
yes, yes. Have you seen Upload?
Yes, I have. Is that from is that from people of The Office?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
I didn't
yes.
know
That's from
that.
people from The Office. Yeah,
Oh
it's so good
man.
too.
Yeah, I love Upload
And
too.
the Good Place has a book from the author, which I forgot who it is, but he plays Moses, the Dwight's cousin. It's the author of
Okay.
The Good Place, and he has this book called How to Be Good or something like this. He explaining all the philosophy of
Right.
the Good Place, and he starts with the
Yeah.
question: should I punch my friend in the face? And the answer is obvious no. And he explains why, like in philosophy, no. And the next question is, but what if he was a jerk? And he explains why not. And he just keeps building. Like, it's so good. It's so funny. Wow, I love the Good Place. So you wanted to be you in the Good Place, but would you be
Yeah, what?
in the actual false Good Place, or where would you live in
Oh,
there?
definitely. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be in the false Good Place. I want to be in the real one that they get to. Spoilers that they get to towards the end. Just like knowing that there is like this heaven that we can all go to, that we can all reach once we reach this like philosophical completeness. that we
Yeah,
can be like. It's so beautiful, like watching the show and like seeing people like with their
it
parents, with
is.
their siblings who they've had like bad things with all their lives, but now they're like whole and they can connect with each other and like spend
Yeah.
all this time together without like worrying about like running out of time or commitments or anything like that. And it's just like this
Yeah.
really beautiful idea of like what, paradise heaven could be like.
Yeah. And the final notion that you don't have to be perfect, but you have to be able to improve, right? Because in the beginning
Ah,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, you have to be perfect to get to the good place.
Get enough
And
points.
but
Yeah.
they get to this, no, you don't have to. You just have to be able to improve and to have the chance to do the right choice and have the opportunity to make the right choices, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's one of the
exactly.
beautiful things about the good place. I love the show. It's a shame my wife saw it's like too silly because the beginning is like it's really really
Quite silly.
silly, but it's gets so philosophical. It's so good. It's great choice, by the
Yeah.
way. I love this answer.
Oh, thank you.
The next question is, if you could take anything from this fictional world's universe and made that thing real in our own world, would you choose to make it real and why? And the same thing, like it can be like a person, an entity, a location, a faction, a power source, anything, and make it real here.
Oh man, that's a really good question. I mean,
Thank you.
going back to animorphs, like I'd love to be able to turn like into animals, like if I could bring that technology into this world, to be able to, or even to
Yeah.
just turn into like other people and see like how they view the world, or like understand like what's different or what's the same. Obviously flying would be amazing, or swimming underwater as like a dolphin or something would be cool.
Yeah. And probably would be very interesting to see which animals each person would choose to turn into, right? Would probably
Yeah.
say something about them, and I don't know. I know I probably would be weird too because we would start being attracted to people in animal forms in some way, right? Because it will happen. Because if everybody can turn into something, would probably I don't know.
I mean, wasn't that another theme in The Good Place too? Like no matter what you have, you can turn it into a sex thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Bill, this series is so good. Weirdos, if you're listening to this, you haven't watched The Good Place. It's so good. It's funny. It's intelligent. It's mysterious. There's a lot of stuff that you're finding out. I know we may have given some spoilers, but it's finding out. It's like it's slowly. It's very fun. So check that out.
Mhm.
Another question I have about this, it's might probably would be similar to the one you answer now, but it's like if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you choose to have, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
Mm. I mean, I've always joked that an amazing superpower that would be fun to have is whenever you offer somebody a high five, they just have to drop what they're doing and they give you a great high five back. Um, and like
Yeah,
it's funny and like you could use it to relate to people, but you never know. Like you find a bank robber and you offer them a high five, so they gotta drop like their
yeah,
guns, they gotta drop everything.
yeah.
It's just de-escalate the situation right away.
That's a great, maybe modern day spell, like right, the
Oh yeah.
mandatory high five, like a yeah, it's very creative
Oh, that's a
uses for
good
it.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Awesome. And what would be the first thing we do that with the high five power?
Oh man, I've never really thought about that. Like I thought that would be a cool power to have, but like, what would you do with that, Diego?
I
Diego?
don't know. I probably would go to like a public place and spread some joy, and maybe
Mm.
people would get excited, high fiving each other, and
Yeah.
it can brighten the day
Yeah.
of some like you go to like to the a plaza in like the center of the city, so all these people rushing around trying to get the paper to the forums or deliver something, and you go there and start high fiving people, and maybe they feel a little bit better, like that's connection, that's human touch, and they're all in their heads think about their work. I don't know. It can be useful. I don't know. Adrian, the last question I have for you is, do you remember the last time you felt really really happy and just grateful for being here and being alive. And if you do, can you share with us when was that and what is that you were doing?
Yeah, actually, definitely yesterday. I took the kids. We took my wife and I. We took the kids to the zoo. Because it's
Awesome.
the week off this week, and my
Mm-hmm.
daughter was like, "I want to go somewhere with a giraffe." So like, luckily there is a zoo pretty nearby that has giraffes in it. Um, like I have feelings about zoos, and they're not my favorite thing for some reason.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the kids just had a blast, and we went to like eat like we found a random restaurant nearby that had like some just delicious barbecue style food. And it was playing like really nice.
Brazilian barbecue or how is barbecue? Where do you live? Where do you live right now?
Right now, I live in Massachusetts in the United States.
Oh yeah. How is the barbecue
Yeah.
there? Like it's like
I mean,
which you
there's some
prefer,
good
Brazilian
places.
barbecue, Massachusetts barbecue, or do you have Ecuadorian barbecue? Is that any different?
We have Ecuadorian barbecue, but 100% Brazilian barbecue is the best on the planet, the best I've tried. So,
Yeah, wise
yeah,
choice, wise
definitely.
choice.
I
Yeah.
want to go eat Brazilian barbecue for my birthday next month, but this was more like southern United
Mm-hmm.
States style.
Yeah.
Um, it had really good hot sauce though, so that was nice.
Yeah. And you're
And
having a
we were all
family
just
meal.
yeah, we were all just
Yeah.
having a really nice time, like a nice family time. Country Roads was on the radio, which I don't know why, but like that song just makes everything feel like more emotional.
What song?
Um, that song, like, Country Roads, Take Me Home to the Place I
Oh yeah.
Belong. I'm a terrible singer, so I don't know why I just did that. Yeah, it was just a really nice moment. Just feeling connected to each other, feeling like we just, all of our
Yeah.
attention is on each other.
That's
That was
that's
good.
awesome. That's an amazing moment, and you catch yourself just looking at them and not saying anything and just enjoying and being there. It's amazing, and congratulations for being able to stop everything and doing this and remembering. And by the way, I know you're not very good at rituals, ADHD. Like, but do you try or would you like to have like maybe a gratitude practice to remember those moments, or are you naturally good
Mm.
at remembering the good things that happen to you?
So I'm not so good at like daily or weekly rituals, but I'm pretty good at like yearly things. So like for example, my wife and I on our wedding anniversary, we do these questions that we ask ourselves and then we tell each other our answers while we're celebrating an anniversary. And it's like,
Nice.
you write down 10 things you like about the other person, and then you write down 5 memories from this year that were really special to you, and then you write down 3 things that you're looking forward to in the next year or in the future, so that we're kind of like focusing on the now and the before and the future, and we like read those answers to each other, and it's just like a
Yeah,
really nice ritual to like celebrate another year.
yeah.
I try
That's
to do the same
amazing.
thing, like yeah,
Let me
yeah, I think
recap here. 10 things you like about each other, like
yep,
5 things you remember from this year. Is that it? 3 things for what?
yeah, sorry.
The
So
three
yeah, so
is
10 things you like about the other person, 5 good memories
five
from this
things you
year, and
remember.
yep, and 3 things that you're looking forward to that haven't happened yet, but you're excited about.
Ah, awesome. I love this. I'm gonna steal. Can I steal
Yeah.
this? Can
Oh
weirdos
yeah,
steal this?
absolutely.
It's great. Yeah.
Highly
Thank
recommend it
you.
to anyone. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like these like yearly rituals where you kind of just like look back and forward. Like in New Year's, I also like to do something similar where I just
Mm.
ask myself
Do
like
you
what
have?
went well this year.
Oh, do you do that in like in New Year's too?
Yeah. That one's a little more informal, just like asking myself like what went well, what didn't go
Mm-hmm.
well, what would I change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much
I
like
re-
resolutions as much as just like critique. Yep.
yeah. I remember once reading about having a jar, and it says like every day you write something good that happened and put it on the jar and you read like in the New Year's. But maybe
Mm,
like every day is hard. Right? But maybe every time something happens, you're happy. Just write something in a post it, and just put it in the jar. And maybe reading it in the end of the year can be really good, right? And remembering stuff. Uh,
yeah, this is
but
really
but
good.
this list it sounds good too. Adrian, that was basically all the questions I had prepared. And I'm really grateful for being here and sharing your work, sharing your wisdom, the things you learned, and talking about your mental health, talking about being a parent, and giving us these tips that you gave us. Do you have any last messages for the wonderful weirdos that are still listening to us out there?
Just thank you for listening. This is an amazing podcast, and I'm just really honored to be able to take part of this and talk with you.
Thank you, my friend. And where can our wonderful weirdos find you in the internet out there?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Twitter or X as LatiNerd. I'm also on Blue Sky with LatiNerd, and my project Koboa can be found at koboasetting.com. KOBOA setting.com.
Yeah, we'll put links on the show notes, so please go, wonderful weirdos, go out there, check it out. It's a very unique setting, well researched for someone that's very in the middle of everything, and I'm very excited to see Cyber Quito and everything else that you make. Thank you very much, Adrian. And can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show? Keep it weird, everybody.
Yeah, keep it weird, everyone. Or sorry, keep it weird, everybody.
Everybody, just keep it weird is the important, right? Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to ko-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.